From peanut butter sandwiches to luxury chocolates and tropical beaches, nuts are everywhere. But have you ever stopped to wonder what they actually are? Well, if you have, then look no further, because today we're breaking down every major nut, and by the end of this video, you'll know which nut isn't really a nut, which one is naturally radioactive, and which one might be the strangest food you've been eating your entire life. Peanuts. Peanuts have built their reputation on a lie because they aren't nuts at all. They're legumes, the same family as peas and lentils, and instead of growing on a tree, they grow underground after the plant's flower bends down and buries itself in the soil, a process botanists call geocarpy. Roughly half of the peanuts grown in the United States today end up as peanut butter, quite a career upgrade for a legume once considered animal feed. Almonds. Almonds are technically seeds hiding inside a fruit, the same category as a peach pit, just without the flesh anyone wants to eat. California grows the overwhelming majority of the world's supply, turning the Central Valley into a sea of pink blossoms every spring that depends on rented bee colonies trucked in from across the country. Wild almonds contain a compound that breaks down into cyanide, which is why bitter almonds were bred out of commercial existence centuries ago. Sweet almonds, the kind sold today, carry none of that toxin and instead bring a mild, buttery flavor that made them a prized ingredient in Mediterranean cooking for thousands of years. Cashews. Cashews grow at the bottom of a colorful edible fruit called the cashew apple, but the nut itself is sealed inside a shell coated in a caustic resin closely related to the oil in poison ivy. That's why cashews are never sold in their shell, since workers have to roast or steam them first just to make handling safe. The tree originated in Brazil, but Portuguese traders carried it across the world in the 16th century, and it eventually became a staple crop from India to Mozambique. Vietnam has since become the world's largest exporter of processed cashews, even though the trees barely grow there, because so much raw cashew gets shipped in from Africa for processing. Pistachios. Pistachios are famous for splitting open on their own as they ripen, and the sound of thousands of shells cracking apart on the tree is loud enough that some farmers describe entire orchards as laughing. That natural split earned the pistachio the nickname the smiling nut in several languages long before marketing got involved. Ancient Persian royalty treated pistachios as a luxury snack, and queens were reportedly forbidden from cracking the shells in public because it was considered undignified. Walnuts. Walnuts look uncannily like a tiny brain, with two wrinkled halves split right down the middle, which made them a symbol for brain health in folk medicine for thousands of years. The walnut's scientific name, juglans, translates roughly to nut of Jupiter, because the Romans believed the gods themselves snacked on them. English walnuts are the smooth, mild variety found in most stores, while black walnuts carry a stronger flavor and a shell so tough that cracking one by hand is practically a sport in parts of the American South. Hazelnuts. Hazelnuts owe much of their fame to Nutella, which uses so many of them that the spread alone is estimated to consume around a quarter of the world's hazelnut supply every year. Turkey produces the overwhelming majority of the global crop along its Black Sea coast, where the hilly terrain happens to suit the trees perfectly. They roast into a deep flavor that almonds and cashews can't quite match, which is why bakers reach for them in pralines and espresso drinks. Macadamia. Macadamia trees are native to the rainforests of Australia, and they can take 7 to 10 years before producing a usable harvest, which is part of why these nuts carry one of the highest price tags in the entire nut aisle. Their shells are absurdly tough, requiring around 300 pounds of pressure per square inch to crack, far more force than almost any other commercial nut needs. Despite being a popular human snack, macadamias are toxic to dogs, capable of causing weakness and tremors, even in small amounts. Pecans. Pecans are the only major tree nut native to North America, harvested by indigenous peoples for thousands of years before European settlers ever arrived. The word pecan comes from an Algonquian term referring to nuts that require a stone to crack, which says a lot about how tough early varieties were before cultivation softened the shells. Texas named the pecan tree its official state tree, and pecan pie became a defining dish of Southern holiday tables, especially across Texas, Georgia, and Louisiana. Hickory nuts. Hickory nuts come from the same family tree as the pecan, since both belong to the genus Caria. But hickory nuts tend to have thicker shells and a more intense, almost smoky sweetness once cracked open. Native American communities relied on them heavily, grinding them into a milky liquid called hickory milk long before dairy alternatives were trendy. The wood from hickory trees is also the same wood used to smoke barbecue, tying the tree's name more closely to flavor than almost any other plant in North America. Chestnuts. Chestnuts are unusual among nuts because they're mostly starch rather than fat, tasting closer to a potato than to an almond once roasted. The image of chestnuts roasting on an open fire comes from a long European tradition of street vendors selling them hot in winter markets across cities like Paris and Rome. American chestnut trees were nearly wiped out in the early 20th century by a blight accidentally imported from Asia, killing billions of trees and permanently reshaping forests across the eastern United States. Because of their low fat and high moisture content, chestnuts spoil far faster than other nuts and have always needed to be eaten or processed quickly rather than stored for months. Pine nuts. Pine nuts come from the cones of certain pine species and have to be extracted by hand from inside the cone scales, making them one of the most labor-intensive nuts in the world. That labor cost is exactly why pine nuts are so expensive, with prices that can rival some types of seafood. They're a key ingredient in traditional pesto, where their resinous, buttery flavor balances the sharpness of fresh basil and garlic. Pine nuts imported from certain species in China have also been linked to a strange condition nicknamed pine mouth, leaving a bitter metallic taste that can last for days after eating them. Brazil nuts. Brazil nuts grow inside large, heavy pods that resemble coconuts, with each pod containing a dozen or more nuts packed together like sections of an orange, and a falling pod is heavy enough to cause real injury if it drops from the canopy. These trees rely almost entirely on a single species of orchid bee for pollination, which means Brazil nuts can't easily be farmed and are still mostly harvested from wild forest trees. They're also famous for containing more selenium than nearly any other food on Earth, to the point that one or two nuts can exceed an adult's recommended daily intake. Beech nuts. Beech nuts are small, triangular nuts that grow inside a spiky husk on beech trees across Europe and North America. They were a major food source for wildlife and rural households before larger commercial nuts pushed them aside. Pigs were historically allowed to forage in beech forests specifically to fatten up on the fallen nuts, a practice that shaped European land use traditions for centuries. Raw beech nuts contain a mild toxin that can cause stomach upset in large quantities, so they were traditionally roasted first, bringing out a flavor often compared to a milder hazelnut. Beechnut oil was once pressed and used for cooking and lamp fuel across parts of France, though it's largely disappeared from modern use. Acorns. Acorns come from oak trees and are loaded with tannins, the same bitter compounds found in strong tea, meaning they have to be leached in water for hours or days before they're safe to eat. Indigenous peoples across California and other regions turned acorns into a dietary staple for thousands of years, grinding them into flour after leaching and using it for bread and porridge long before wheat arrived with European settlers. A single oak tree can produce thousands of acorns in a good year, making them a remarkably reliable food source for humans and wildlife alike. Squirrels famously bury far more acorns than they ever dig back up, accidentally planting entire future forests in the process. Coconuts. Coconuts aren't actually nuts in the botanical sense either, joining peanuts in that club, since they're technically classified as a fibrous one-seeded drupe, the same category that includes peaches and plums. The outer husk is so buoyant that coconuts can survive ocean currents for months, which is exactly how coconut palms spread to remote islands across the Pacific and Indian Oceans, long before humans ever helped them along. Coconut water and coconut milk aren't the same liquid at all, since the clear water comes naturally inside young coconuts, while the creamy milk is made by pressing grated coconut meat. Whether large or small, every nut has its own remarkable story, packed with surprising science, history, and adaptations that make it one of a kind.